Hello and welcome to the Blueprint Review podcast, our monthly chat about a wide range of films, new or old, popular or obscure, focusing largely but not exclusively on physical media, much like the site itself. I'm going to start off by apologising for the long delay in recording a new episode. It's been far too long. I think it was January we did the end of year show. But yeah, just life and too many discs to review got in the way, and I just kept putting it off and off. But just the other week, I was like, no, let's do it. Let's get another episode and go. So yeah, we're back. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep it a monthly, be able to keep it a monthly thing, because I'm just getting so much on these days. But I will do my best to keep things ticking over and not let it fall by the wayside as it did in the past. Because as I say, this is like the third reincarnation, I think, of the Blueprint Review podcast. But yes, so we'll stick with it. And so, yeah, as usual on the show, we're going to kind of talk about discs we're looking forward to, and also reviewing random titles that we've watched from our collections or elsewhere. As per the last few episodes, though, I'm decided to give the show a theme to kind of keep the conversation a bit more focused. And usually I've had an excuse, like I've had a November, so I thought November, or we had a horror one in October. But this is May, so I was like, I didn't really know what to talk about. So I just randomly went with silent comedy because I enjoy good silent comedy. So we're going to talk about silent comedy. But first of all, before we get into the topic, let's introduce ourselves. So, and I'm David Brooke, a Blueprint Reviews editor. And with me here today are fellow Blueprint Review writers, Andy Goulding and John Meakin. It's good to have you both back on the show.
Thanks. Good to be back.
Yeah, excellent. And before we dig into the main topic, though, let's take a look at any forthcoming discs we're excited about. And because it's been a while since we last recorded, I've got quite a few to mention. So I'll kick things off. First one is, I don't know why it's interested me so much, but I think the trailer just looked really fun. And I've been reading about the guy after, I think Justin reviewed a documentary about him. But basically is Severin's forthcoming box set, Bloody Legend, the complete Cliff Twemlow collection. It just looks bonkers. It's basically Cliff Twemlow is, from what I gather, is a Mancunian. He's a guy from Manchester who he wanted to be a film star and kind of just started making these films on the cheap, but that tried to be bigger than they were. So he tried to make these big action movies and like horror movies and sci-fi movies just on the absolute cheap in Manchester. And they've got, particularly the film he made, GBH, was on the Video Nasties list as well, so it became a bit of a cult kind of film. And Severin have basically compiled all of his work together with, as usual, loads of documentaries and things like this, and including there was a documentary, I think it's called Mancunian Man. I haven't got it written down in front of me. There's a documentary that was made a couple of years ago about him that's supposed to be very good. And just as I say, Justin actually reviewed that on the site a couple of years ago, a year or two ago. And it just kind of captured my imagination. It looks a lot of fun. So that's on my list. I must admit, although I've been good this year, not bought as many discs as I have in the past, I did have a moment of weakness and did pre-order that because there are loads of films there. It seemed like good value, but anyway, it's still too much money. But anyway, on from that, another set that I'm interested in that Andrew might have spotted and already have on his list, but we shall see, is Radiance are releasing the Essential Polish Animation set.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, it's like I think it's a 2-disc with Blu-ray with just loads of short Polish animated films on there, and I love a good animated film, so I'm totally there for that. I'm quite interested.
Yeah, that's my list now.
Absolutely. And then
if us three were represented by ice cream flavors, I'm sure I'm going to be vanilla. But please carry on, because I'm loving it. But yeah, carry on.
I always like the more weird and wonderful kind of releases, to be honest. But it's then next up is also from Radiance. Is they've got World Noir Volume 3, and obviously we had our noir episode recently, and I do love the genre, so anything noir, I'm there, even if I can't pronounce the word. And so yeah, looking forward to that. And then a more mainstream disc that's coming out that I'm interested in is Arrow are releasing Witness, and that's a film I used to enjoy quite a lot as a teenager when I was first kind of getting into films. I used to have it on video, and it's something that I'm just really surprised it's not seen a Blu-ray release so far. So I was really pleased to see it come out. I've not seen it for a long time. I don't know how well it's held up, but I always used to enjoy it, and I've always been a Peter Weir fan. And while it's not my number one Peter Weir film, it's still up there. So that's good. And then finally, one that's actually out very soon is Terror in the Fog, the Wallace Crimi at CCC. So Eureka have got a collection of Edgar, and I think it's Edgar Wallace, and also his son. Is it Brian Edgar Wallace? I think it is. It's like German adaptations of their books. They just sound fun, like good kind of easy viewing, sort of dark crime movies. So yeah, that's my list. So yeah, John, you've kind of downplayed yours already, but we'll sandwich you in the middle, the vanilla ice cream in the middle of what me and Andrew have got.
So this month is going to see the release of the Spaghetti Westerns, Leone's trilogy.
Oh, yes.
And thanks to the website, I've already been able to see the 4K of Fistful of Dollars, and it's a magnificent release. And it's such a gift to have that come just a couple of months after Yojimbo, because being able to compare the two, you're able to see just what a hack Leone was on that first film, and yet it's still genius.
Oh yeah,
even though it's a carbon copy. And then what else was coming up? Perhaps a little less vanilla, but the Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3.
Oh, yeah, that's on my list as well.
4K. Oh, it's one of my favourite films.
Yeah. I got sent this screener extremely early. I have it on my disc ready to review. Yeah, I love that film.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I had Taken a Pound 1, 2, 3 as well. It's coming out early June, which is just after my birthday, so I think I'm probably going to end up treating myself to that nice. Release. There's a couple coming out in July, which I'm signed up to a review. Is The Dresser and HMS Defiant, which is probably more well known as Damn the Defiant, which is a much better title, I think. But they're coming out through Indicator. In June, Curzon are releasing Flow, which I still haven't seen, and
nice.
I'm very keen to watch, because I love the director's first film, and obviously it got a lot of acclaim. And then my only other one, I think you've grabbed this one already, David. It's the Criterion release of Midnight.
Oh yeah,
is the Mitchell Leeson film, which is an early script by Billy Wilder and Charles Brackett before Billy Wilder stepped into the director's chair, and I have seen it. It's very good, so I look forward to reading your review of that.
Yeah, it's one I've not seen, but I'm always there for kind of the golden age comedies. It's a genre I've not seen enough of, and it's only recently, like the last couple of years, I've realised how much I enjoy them. So I'm just, whenever I see them come up to review, I usually eat them up.
Yeah, there's a wealth of those to get stuck into as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I just remembered the other one. Sorcerer.
Yes, that's a good film, isn't
it? When I first saw Sorcerer, I thought, this is just because I love Wages of Fear.
Yeah,
and it's like Friedkin can be so 50-50, but when he was on point, some of his stuff is amazing. And Sorcerer I thought was incredible. It's like the touch of evil of action films. So I'm not sure what the 4K is going to come up like, but I think it's going to be worth seeing.
Absolutely, yeah. It's as I say, there's some of the ones on your list. I mean, I love Sergio Leone, so usually that would be all over my list, but I haven't gone 4K yet, so the kind of new releases, I'm like, yeah, whatever. But one of these days, I do have a 4K monitor on my PC that I can. I've managed to kind of somehow get to play the discs on there, but it doesn't. I keep having issues with it. I need to just get a player, and one of these days, it's because I'm a projector guy and I can't afford a new 4K projector. But one of these days.
Okay, yeah. At the moment, I'm using a PS5.
Okay.
And it's not bad, but the TV I've got isn't great, and so the PS5 is throttling a bit. Yeah. And actually, I find the standalone players are much better. So I'm going to dig that out and reconnect it. So yeah, because I'm just I'm missing it a little bit.
Nice. Excellent. Well, lots to look forward to. And there were others I could have added to the list as well. As I say, there's loads coming out, but those are ones that I just thought I would mention. So cool. Let's move on to our topic. So silent comedies. We were talking just before we started recording that I kind of suggested the theme, but it made me realize that actually there's a lot of gaps. There's a lot of stuff I haven't seen. So it'll be interesting to see what you guys are going to bring to the table what I tend to find with silent comedies, silent films, you tend to find a lot of, they've become a bit of a niche thing. Like not everyone really gets into them. Some people struggle to kind of watch them, but you find, for me at least, some of the titles that have stood the test of time, that still people kind of love, still people kind of watch, are quite often the silent comedies. And saying that, there are probably thousands that have kind of fallen by the wayside that nobody talks about or watches anymore. But you could argue that a lot of that is down to just availability. That a lot of films were just, they weren't kind of preserved in the same way back then. They were kind of throwaway entertainment, and a lot of the films have kind of fallen by the wayside. But we do have the work, particularly of some kind of particular major artists that we'll get to in a minute, that have been continuously restored for decades and decades on, and some of them still look remarkably stunning these days. And they still work. That's the thing. That's with a good silent comedy, even though you're talking at least 100 years old, some of them, they can still make you laugh. They can still be a lot of fun. They can still be remarkably well made. It's not all just about the gag. There are some incredibly well made and innovative films out there that run under the banner of silent films.
And I've often thought that Murnau's Sunrise, which isn't a comedy, but it's perfect.
Yeah.
And if you look at that film in 1928, I think it was about 1928, it's so sophisticated, and cinema was just then completely ruined by that pesky sound coming in.
Yeah,
and it's like they peaked. And you watch it now, and it remains perfect. And so it's like when sound came in, it just completely held medium back. Quite a while.
There were a couple of directors who kind of played with it and did make sound work fairly soon, but yeah, you are right. It did shake the industry up in not necessarily a positive way to begin with. I mean, obviously over time they learned to use it, and obviously the 30s, particularly in Hollywood, there's some absolutely amazing films. But you're right, it was although you all think of it as just the norm now, it must have been a nightmare for all these companies to suddenly totally change the way they made films, the way they did their job. I mean, obviously, Singing in the Rain makes a kind of a comedic kind of look at that period and what it meant for the actors. It's one of the reasons I really enjoy that film. It's obviously there's great songs and it's very funny, but I do love I love the fact that it's looking at that particular period.
There's all these interesting things that to overcome. Like early on when I can't remember what film it was from, but I can remember seeing footage of a film where they tried to hide a microphone. They needed a microphone actually on the set, and there's two people having a conversation over a table, and in the middle of this table there's just this enormous flower in a vase. They keep leaning in to talk to each other.
Yeah. There are some good gags with that in Singing in the Rain, I think, if I remember correctly. It's been a while since I've seen it, but yeah, brilliant. But yeah, so back to silent comedy anyway. I think originally, well, I guess silent film in general early on was kind of dominated by short form, and there are a lot of and comedy really came through in that. There's a lot of short comedies that can still be watched now, and that's where a lot of the kind of big key figures came from. And I must admit, I'm not as knowledgeable at the shorts. I don't know why. I always have. It's not that I don't. When I usually sit and watch short films, I usually can quite often enjoy them, but I don't seek them out. I don't actually actively watch them very often. I don't know. I get a bit snooty and want something more substantial, but it's crazy really, because especially with silent comedy, you can get some absolutely cracking kind of half-hour, 20-minute films, and I mean, some of these might come up later, I guess, in when we talk about some of our favorites. But first of all, I guess before we kind of crack and kind of talk about some of our favorites and some of the key figures and things, I kind of want to ask about people's kind of personal history with silent comedies. I guess I'll briefly say mine. I mean, I've got a hazy memory of this, so I might be making some of this up, but I'm pretty sure my introduction to silent comedy, I had a VHS tape, it was a Charlie Chaplin one. It had The Kid and A Dog's Life. Dog's Life is short one, The Kid's feature length. I can't remember a huge amount about them. I haven't watched them for a while, but I did enjoy them. I did enjoy them quite a great deal. But then it wasn't until a few years later that I watched, and this is where I can't quite remember which the first was, but I think I watched them both around a similar time. But for me, it was The Gold Rush and it was The General, and that's when I kind of got really excited about silent comedy and really kind of really could see what it could do. And then I kind of very slowly, I wouldn't say I instantly jumped on loads more, but over time since then I've kind of tried to dig out more. And yeah, but those are the kind of the key films that drew me in. Andy, how about you? What kind of, where did you first get introduced to silent comedy?
I'm pretty sure that my first one was The Gold Rush as well.
Okay.
I can remember it was just when I was trying to broaden my horizons. I think I bought one of those 1001 films you must see before you die.
Yeah.
I'd been thumbing through that, and I thought I'll have a crack at silent comedy. And I think I watched The Gold Rush, and I remember it not having that much impact on me, really. The first time I saw it, because I wasn't used to silent comedy. I think I was like just sat there waiting for it to be hilarious.
Yeah.
Obviously, there's so much more to it. But then the next one I watched was Sherlock Jr., and that instantly got me hooked. And to me, that is the perfect starting point, because it's only 45 minutes long, so it's very, but it's absolutely packed with so many different kinds of joke, and it moves at such a lick. And so as soon as I saw that, I thought, all right, I've got to see all of Keaton's work. So I watched loads of Buster Keaton after that. And initially I thought, oh yeah, Keaton's the one for me, and Chaplin probably isn't. But then I went back for Chaplin, and of course, when I rewatched The Gold Rush, I thought, well, this is fantastic. And it was just getting that point of entry where I could start to appreciate it as an art form, because often I find like what I get most out of the silent comedies is like the spectacle and the artistry of the kind of balletic slapstick that they do, and it just once I tuned into that, I became a massive Chaplin fan, and then I got around to, I think I probably went to Safety last. And that got me into that, then got me into Harold Lloyd. Obviously, like a lot of people, like you said, The General was one of the first ones that you watched and really got you into it. And I think a lot of people who want to try silent comedy, they go to The General first because it's one of the big ones. And for me, it's not the ideal starting point, because I think it's one of the least funny.
Yeah, I was gonna actually mention that when I kind of talk about some of my favorites. I do definitely agree. I love The General, but for me, I love The General because it's almost like a prototype action movie, rather than a silent comedy. But it is funny in places. But I totally agree.
I think it's really the last reel, isn't it? It's that last section which is the bit that everyone talks about, and it is fantastic.
Yeah.
But then when you watch it for the first time, it's going on a bit for the first section, because my goodness, when he released it at the time, he intended to have more of a story to it. How dare it just be on a train, But we all talk about the train. There's a whole preamble before that.
I don't think it's a failing that it isn't as funny though, because I think I think it was that was the ambition, wasn't it, to make this spectacle. And like you say, there's enough laughs sprinkled through it to say, it succeeds as a comedy, but it succeeds much more as an action film for me.
Just it was the stunts really that when I first saw that, because I've always been a bit of an action movie junkie anyway, and that's what really blew me away with The General, was the crazy kind of stuff they did. Which it's bonkers. People talk about Jackie Chan and things like that, but he had nothing on Keaton. Well, he was obviously he's openly said he's inspired by Buster Keaton, and you can see why, it's especially in The General. To know, but I guess we're already kind of. I had these kind of sections in mind for tonight's podcast, but we're kind of bleeding into a lot of them already. But I guess, I mean, we've already mentioned the big three, so I guess key figures in silent comedy. The big three, obviously, as we mentioned, Buster Keaton, Charlie Chaplin, and Harold Lloyd. We've just touched on him a little bit. They're actually what I often personally forget, and it wasn't until I was doing a bit of research that really it used to be a big four, and the fourth was Harry Langdon. Many people consider him, and I must admit I've not seen any of his films. I don't know if any of you guys have kind of watched any of the Harry Langdon films.
Funnily enough, I dug into him for this.
Okay.
I've watched all but one of his existing feature films, and they are very good. I did really enjoy them. But they are not quite up to the standard. I think the big three, like whenever you do anyone talks about silent comedy, oh right, we're going to talk about these same three again. But the big three are the big three for a reason. They do stand head and shoulders above all the others, I think. Really. But Harry Langdon is an interesting. I'll talk about him a bit more later when we go to
no worries.
John's introduction.
But yeah, I think, and I think it's. I think the reason why the other three are possible. Well, I mean, I shouldn't say this because I don't know Harry Langdon's films, but from what I gather and from what you were saying just then, is I guess why Keaton, Chaplin, Lloyd are so successful is because, as you mentioned earlier, it wasn't just about them making funny films. They were masters of cinema. They made some absolutely stunning, inventive, clever, beautifully made films, and that's kind of why they last, because they've gone beyond comedy. While still remaining very funny. Some of those films still have me cracking up. Yeah, I guess another figure. I think in terms of discussing the figures, I don't know about you guys, but I've actually we're going to talk about some of our favorites. I've kind of pretty much just broken down my favorites in terms of a list of Harold Lloyd films, a list of Buster Keaton films, Charlie Chaplin films. They might go in more detail about what we love or prefer from those different three in a minute. Whilst we're talking about key figures, though, I do want to mention another couple of people. I mean, another kind of important but less famous figure in terms of particular films is Roscoe Arbuckle, or Fatty Arbuckle, as some people refer to him, because he actually worked with the big three. He reportedly mentored Chaplin, and he obviously helped get Keaton's film career off the ground, because Keaton was in Keaton's early shots were with Roscoe Arbuckle. I mean, there was a pretty horrific scandal that kind of tarnished Arbuckle's reputation. I don't know if we want to get into or not. So yeah, there's a big reason why I guess he's not remembered too fondly, but it's worth mentioning him as kind of an influence on these guys in terms of getting them started and getting started at a similar time as well.
Interestingly enough, I've got a lot about Roscoe Arbuckle to talk about later, and I've dug into the scandal a bit, and
we'll get into that.
I'll go, but it's actually the film that I'm going to review later on. One of the ones that I watched, so I'll save that for later.
Nice. Okay, cool. And I guess the other people we need to mention are Laurel and Hardy. I mean, they only worked on shorts at that period, but again, there's nothing wrong with that. I think, as I say, I just have this weird snootiness about the length of films. But yeah, they although their talkies are more famous, they made a heck of a lot of silent shorts that were very popular and helped kind of get their names. And I'd say Eureka have been releasing them at the moment. I reviewed the first box set. I didn't have a chance for the second box set, and I must admit I'm not the biggest Laurel and Hardy fan in the world, but working through that first set, I did still enjoy it quite a lot. I mean, repeating myself again, I don't feel their films, at least those silent ones, they don't have the same kind of level of artistry in terms of filmmaking as Keaton, Chaplin, and Lloyd. I think they've and their gags can quite often be not quite as clever or kind of inventive, but I do find that they're consummate professionals. They have nailed down those classic gags to perfection. And as you say, when you watch those early silents, the first few films, they don't know how to use Laurel and Hardy, and they haven't become their characters. But as you got to the end of like 28, towards the end of 28, they were starting to find their stride, and it was really working for me. It's as I say, the films are a lot of fun. They're not like classy, mind-blowing films in themselves, but I do find them a lot of fun. That I'd be interested to hear your kind of take on their silent work in general.
An interesting point about Laurel and Hardy is that when I was growing up, I was introduced to silent films a little bit through Laurel and Hardy, mainly because they were always on TV. Back in the days when channels used to have dead spots and they'd fill it with things like Laurel and Hardy and random stuff. But a family friend was really into Laurel and Hardy. He was one of my dad's friends. And years later, when I started getting more into film and I was talking to him about silent, he had no time whatsoever for Buster or Charlie or Harold.
Interesting.
Because he thought that they all hid behind camera tricks. And to be honest, his opinion of films was more honest. He wasn't too fussy about where things came from or how they were made. What he liked about Laurel and Hardy was what you saw is what you got.
Yeah.
And they would do longer shots of routines, whereas Chaplin and Buster and the others were pushing even then what editing was capable of. And Laurel and Hardy a little less. They were more a true double act, just presenting themselves on screen. So it's interesting to think back to his opinion that he loved Laurel and Hardy, silent talkies, the whole lot, but he loved them because of them. And he was kind of almost put off by the artifice of the others, whereas I'm the opposite way around.
Yeah, I think it's a fair point. Now, it's an interesting take. It almost, I guess it fits in a little with what I was saying earlier about how I do find them incredibly good performers, even if their films aren't always as kind of interesting as the other ones.
Yeah.
And
I've never actually seen any of the silent Laurel and Hardy. I've only seen some of their features, and I've seen the music box as well. The music box is very good. I've never fully clicked with them. They seem like if I dug into it and like spent some time with them, it would click for me, I think, and I would get to understand it. But I've only ever sort of watched them one at a time. Certainly, I found like their sound features tend to be littered with brilliant bits, but they don't quite coalesce into a coherent whole.
They can be a bit of just a string of gags, can't they? Definitely. I think it's worth checking out the shorts. I think, as I say, the first Eureka set, because it's early stuff, it takes a little while to get going. It's a bit scrappy, a bit hit and miss, but I'd be interested to see the second one. I think maybe perhaps because they're not as strong as storytellers as Keaton, Chaplin, and Lloyd. I think perhaps they work better in short form because you don't grow bored of the shtick, because it's just a 20 minutes of gags, and which isn't, it's easier to sit through than like an hour and a half that maybe you're not that interested in. You just like bits and pieces here and there. So it's worth checking out. And what I do find as well is, I think in general, I think I might be right in thinking, I think I voted it as one of my favorite releases of last year is Eureka set. And I think as well, I just enjoyed hearing their stories. A lot of interesting things on there about their past, about how they met, about how the relationship came to be and things. I just found that quite interesting. So it's definitely worth checking those out, even if don't see yourself as a big Laurel and Hardy fan. I guess then, should we start having a look at favorites and digging into, and I guess that can lead into some more discussion of these figures, because as I say, I don't know about you guys, but I've broken it down by people. I've probably done far too many, so I'll try and rush through. So let's go to Harold Lloyd. I don't think we've spoken enough about Lloyd yet. I've come to Harold Lloyd quite late on. I'd seen Safety Last a long time ago and loved it, absolutely loved it. But it's not till recently I've kind of started to get a bit further in there, and I've still got a long way to go. But Safety Last, I must say, it might possibly be my favorite silent comedy, especially in terms of being the most well-rounded one. I found it incredibly funny. The stunt work and the kind of effects work is absolutely incredible, and I think it's the one I've seen the most, at least, as well. And the more I watch it, the more I love it, and I absolutely adore that one. So Safety Last is well up there for me. And as I say, the other one, I've only really seen I think just 3 more of his features, but they've all been excellent. There's The Freshman, which we'll talk about later, because that is my review for this month. There's Girl Shy, which I was going to review, but I'm just going to skim over it now, because I'll talk about The Freshman instead. But Girl Shy, I found it very funny. A lot of gags in there. There's a sweet little romance in there, and it kind of throws in a thrilling kind of chase at the end. Didn't find it as strong as Safety Last, but I did enjoy it quite a lot. And then there's the other one I've seen is The Kid Brother, which is also excellent. It's been a while since I've seen it, but I can remember again. I think what I find with Lloyd is he's a good storyteller. I think he kind of, against what we were saying about Laurel and Hardy, he was good at kind of making the gags work together and actually creating a whole story, a whole film, and not just a string of gags. He's very good at setting the jokes up. and paying them off. And again, like Keaton, he does throw himself around a bit as well. Maybe not quite to the same extent. I don't know. I need to see more of his films, but as I say, I've been really enjoying what I've seen so far. So I'm keen to watch kind of the other few and some of the shorts and things, because I've got that old DVD set that released ages ago, which has all these kind of surviving films on there, which is cool.
Have you seen Speedy?
I've not seen Speedy yet. No, it's one I keep meaning to get to.
It's fantastic, Speedy is.
Yeah, and that one got a Criterion release as well.
Yeah.
More recently, so there's a nice edition of it. So yeah, I can well recommend Speedy.
Yeah, it also is interesting in that it's one of the few old silent films that features someone giving the finger.
Really?
There's a scene where Harold Lloyd flips himself off in a circus mirror.
Oh wow! I didn't know have you guys got several for each person or not? I'm just wondering whether to like jump between you all for your favorite Lloyd films. Will that work?
Yeah, I've got a few.
Okay, so Andy, then what are your thoughts on Harold Lloyd?
Lloyd, well, I used to. I mean, when people talk about the big three, they always say, "Oh, who's your favorite?" And I sort of skip between them, and often Lloyd is sort of swept under the carpet as like the third one, and people choose between Keaton and Chaplin. And I've come to the point where I don't feel the need to choose between them, because I think they all make me happy in such different ways.
Yeah,
and I have such a massive soft spot for Harold Lloyd. I've come to the point where I think I maybe reach for one of his films more often than I do Keaton and Chaplin, because they're just so zippy and upbeat and fun.
Yeah,
and I think his character, the glasses character, as he was not that inventively known, I think I root for him more than I do for Chaplin or Keaton. I think he's so kind of plucky and likable that I really enjoy him. So with Lloyd, there's a lot of great ones. Speedy, as John was saying, is one of my favourites. Safety Last is a classic. Girl Shy and The Freshman, I love both of those as well. But for me, the big one is The Kid Brother. I absolutely love The Kid Brother. I think it's very acclaimed, but it tends to be one of the fewer people have seen.
Yeah,
and it's kind of it has a sort of adventure film feel to it. It does end with like a big sort of fire and stuff. It doesn't have that big stunt like climbing up the building, Safety Last, or the chases in Girl Shy. But the story just comes together so beautifully for me. I think there's a bit in the middle of it. I think it's the perfect Harold Lloyd scene where he's met this girl who he's fallen in love with, and she's walking away down this long track.
Oh yeah.
And Harold Lloyd keeps climbing up. There's this big tree, and he keeps climbing up and calling to her as she walks away. And then she answers his question, and then he thinks of something else he wants to say. So he climbs a little bit higher up the tree as she goes down the path. And it's just such a beautiful, simple idea, but it's executed so brilliantly. It just gives me so much joy, that scene. So yeah, I think Kid Brother, I often think, might be my favorite silent comedy as well.
Wow.
I think I say that when I look at the ones I've got for the other two. Like I say, there's no need to choose, I suppose.
I think sometimes, as I say, as soon as you rewatch one, it's like, oh no, I love this one. It's difficult. I guess, as I say, I think Safety Last for me, it's partly because I've seen it quite often. I've seen it 4 or 5 times, and that helps. That it's so familiar.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I think I'm the same with Safety Last. Like the rest of you, I think he's neglected, and he tends to get forgotten. And he's I don't know. I think, like you, his ratio of value to the time you invest is probably a higher hit rate than the others. And Safety Last always loved because of finding out just how he did the hanging off the clock, and that is a little background story to filmmaking. I just find absolutely fascinating that even then it looked so real. And it's faultless. So yeah, he's he's definitely up there for me.
Plus, he was missing. Is it just a thumb or was it a couple of fingers as well? I can't remember. He's missing part of his hand, isn't he? For, not all of his career. It was a stunt that went wrong with a gag with a bomb, and he still does all this crazy stuff in his films with missing fingers, which is always, and they hide it very well for those days as well. It's it's always find it quite impressive.
Like John said about the hit rate as well. I've seen all of Howard Lloyd's features and quite a few of his shorts, and he's got an incredibly consistent filmography. I think there's out of the silent ones, there's only Dr. Jack that I didn't like quite as much, but he even has a couple of good sound films, which is more than Buster Keaton there. The Cat's Paw, I think, is a good sound film, and then The Milky Way is a brilliant one. That's directed by Leo McCarey, and that I think it was remade as The Calcium Kid further down the line. But that's a really good sound film as well. So he had a lot to give, even with the changeover into sound.
Cool. Well, should we have a look at? I'm going to move on to Buster Keaton next. I think Buster Keaton is definitely the filmmaker from the trio that I have seen the most of. There's very little of his silent work that I've not seen. I've seen a lot of the shorts as well now, and I think not quite all. There's one or two missing, and I do find him very consistent. As I say, I've not seen all of Harold Lloyd's yet to compare. There's only one that I genuinely don't really like, and then that is it College? I always get it mixed up. I think it's College. I wasn't a fan of College. And there's a couple more that are like, yeah, it's okay. It's but they're still watchable. They're still good fun. But from some of his kind of top level films, they're so good. And you've mentioned Sherlock Jr. already. It's just absolutely amazing. I don't find it his funniest film, but it is still very funny. And it's cinematically, it's incredible. There's so many clever tricks in there. The big scene is obviously the when he walks into the cinema. He falls asleep and he's a projectionist, and he walks into the cinema screen, and there's the gag where the film behind him keeps changing, and it affects what's happening to him. It's a terrible way of explaining it, but you guys know what I mean. And it's just absolutely mind blowing how they did that in that era.
I think that's the thing with Buster he's always the one that you go, wow, how did you pull that off? He throws himself into all sorts of things, and I think I was struggling to remember what it was in silent comedy that really got me interested, and I think it might be Buster's short, which I had to look up. What was it called? And I think it was Hard Time.
Oh yeah.
And it's got the simplest gag at the end, which is that he's digging a swimming pool, and he ends up digging so far that he disappears, and then it shows him at the end. He's clearly dug all the way to China, had a family, and he's brought them back, and he brings them back out the hole and shows them his original home. And it's of all the things that Buster Keaton did, that one was the least dangerous and was just a proper gag. But I loved it, and it's just that kind of humor I'm there for all day.
I think Sherlock Jr. is the film where it's the stunt with the water tower. It's the one where he broke his neck and didn't realize and carried on.
Oh yeah. And I think, and the other titles, I mean, we've mentioned The General already. As I say, I like it more as an action film than a comedy, but I just, again, it's just got some incredible sequences in there. And then another one that when I initially watched it, I liked it. I thought, it was very good. But it wasn't until on my second viewing that I absolutely adored it, and that is Our Hospitality.
Oh yes, it is.
I think
amazing.
I think what I've kind of wrote in my review. It's been a while since I've seen it now, but I feel like it's his most well-rounded effort. It works in all kind of aspects. It's got its stunts. It's very funny. It's got a solid story, and it works like gangbusters. It's just I absolutely adore that. And then this is a bit controversial. I think if I remember correctly, me and Andy differed on opinion for this one, but I actually find The Navigator, at least when I last watched it, to be Keaton's funniest film.
Oh, wow.
Even if it's not his best cinematically, I don't know. I think it really had me like belly laughing through the whole watch. Maybe I was just in the right mood. As I say, I don't think it's his best film. And there's a kind of questionable. There's quite a questionable scene with is it? I can't remember. Is it like some islanders or something that he goes past, and that's a bit racially insensitive, but it's the times really. But other than that sequence, I just found it so funny.
Actually, I really should watch it again, but I think I've had 2 runs there, and there's just something about it that never connected with me. I just didn't find it very funny or very thrilling.
No, I guess it's I guess comedy. It depends on what you go for. I guess it's always gonna have different opinions when it comes to that. As I say, I don't think it's definitely not his greatest film, but I just find it very, very funny. And then you've got to mention Steamboat Bill Jr. as well, for the absolute classic kind of visual gags in there. But yeah, those are kind of the big standouts. But as I say, he's made a lot of good stuff, and his shorts are very good as well. But I get the shorts mixed up because I kind of watch them a lot, but next to each other, and I just can't remember which is which. But they are very good. Andy, how about you? And I know you're a big Keaton fan. Well, we're all fans of all 3 of them, I guess. But what are your favorites? I'm a very big
Keaton fan. I think Keaton for me might be at his best. I think he might be the funniest of the 3. He's also the edgiest. He has some like grim jokes and things like that in there. He has some, as he's touching on earlier, David. He has some unfortunately racist jokes in there, which you're going to see in films from that era. But I think there's one particular scene in College which is probably the most offensive racist joke I've ever seen, and I don't even really want to describe it because it feels racist just to go into it. It's like, but yeah, obviously you're going to see that crop up in these old films from time to time. I think we've covered it quite thoroughly, but I think Sherlock Jr. is still my favourite, and that might be my favorite silent film overall, possibly, because it was such an initiator for me in silent film. But it's just that quick run time. It's got enough to satisfy you as a feature, but you can watch it in such a short amount of time. It's great, and I love the way it's got the big thrill stunts like this thing where he goes off on like a motorbike and sidecar, and then it comes apart, and he doesn't realise, and he's riding so it's got the big thrills. But it also has like little bits that are just like sort of magic tricks. There's a bit where someone like jumps through his body, and it's like it's just done like an ordinary magic trick. And then there's one of my favourite scenes in it is the scene where the villains plant an exploding pool ball in the middle of the pack in the pool table, and then Keaton clears up around it. He clears up the table around it and manages to leave it sat on that spot. Sadly, I've seen everything Keaton's done, even all the sound films, and sadly, they do peter out rapidly once sound comes along. But he did make some fantastic shorts as well. 1 Week is one that a lot of people talk about with the house. But there's something like, I really like The Goat and The Scarecrow. They're both really, really good Buster Keaton shorts. So yeah, he's definitely. I think he's also probably the best one to introduce people to, because he tends to still wow modern audiences. With some of the stunts he does. I mean, I think everyone knows the one with the front of the house falling down and the window perfectly going around him, and I don't think everyone knows just how risky that stunt was. But he essentially risked his life for the laugh, didn't he?
Jackie Chan did make that even slightly harder, because which film was it he did it in? Was it Project A?
Well, he did
now.
Well, Project A did the I'm trying to remember now. With Project A, he does that incredibly dangerous kind of. He does the clock tower stunt. But does he do the steamboat pool? I'm trying to think now. I know what you mean. It might be. He definitely does the clock tower one in that one.
But he does this thing where he's looking at the house, And when he sees it start to fall, he steps into position.
Oh yeah.
And it's like, if my goodness, if he got that slightly wrong, you know. But I think with Buster, I think of the three, he's got possibly the most cinematic face naturally.
Yeah.
He's just got a face that just works for pure film charisma. And he doesn't do anything with it.
Yeah, that's even without a stony face, doesn't it? Yeah, it never smiles.
Yeah. But it's Lahane was released on 4K the other week, and it struck me how much Vincent Cassel in that era looks a bit like Buster Keaton, especially with that film being done in black and white.
Yeah.
Which is, it's a really odd comparison to make.
Yeah.
It made me think how much Buster was at the center of all his films, as the others were, but he didn't have to fake it as much.
This was a big thing about when he went to sound films, apart from the fact that the sound films, the scripts aren't very good and he seems out of place. It was just a disappointment to hear his voice. His voice doesn't seem to match, and or the fact that he's got a voice just seems odd when you've just been used to looking at that face.
There's one.
I think is where Laurel and Hardy succeeded, because they were able, their voices were okay, but there were so many foreigners working in silent film and others. I'm not sure. I think it's a myth about squeaky voiced actresses. I think it's more the fact that they were European and couldn't speak a word of English, which was the main problem, that most people disappeared. But yeah, Buster was one of those where he just didn't seem to suit sound. Unless you count it's a mad world. I may have included too many mads in that.
There are a lot.
Yeah, he has got that very brief cameo, but he doesn't say anything there either, so it's fine.
Doesn't he have a cameo in Mel Brooks's silent movie, and he's the only person who speaks in it?
Oh, I'm looking at this now. I can't see it on this. I'm just looking at his. Well, it's not on Letterboxd at least. I'm just looking at there now. Does anyone else have any other favourites from Keaton that haven't been mentioned, or that you particularly want to kind of highlight? That I keep listing too many. I'm afraid. Sorry, guys. Yeah, they're also good.
I think I'm. Again, it's Steamboat Bill Jr. and the General for me. So yeah,
all good stuff. Well, I guess this is the one where I might get a little bit more controversial. This Charlie Chaplin. Charlie Chaplin, I must admit, I've been, I say hit and miss, but it's probably a wrong analogy. It's mainly hits, but I don't always fall for Chaplin's films. Occasionally, or sometimes it takes me a second watch. I think his films, traditionally at least, they tend to be a bit more sentimental, and I don't mind that too much, but occasionally it's a little too much for me. But when it kind of hits the sweet spot, I absolutely love it. And I must admit, like one of them is Modern Times. I've seen Modern Times a couple of times. And the first time I saw that, again, I thought I appreciated it, but I didn't really love it. But I watched it again. I reviewed the Criterion Blu-ray, and I absolutely fell in love with it. I thought, no, this is absolutely a masterpiece. This is fantastic. So some great special effects in there. It's very funny. It's very clever. So that was up there. But my favorite Charlie Chaplin film is City Lights. I just found that got the balance of sentimentality and kind of comedy and kind of beautiful filmmaking. It got everything perfect. It's so hard to fault that film. I've only seen it once actually, but I absolutely fell in love with it.
That's my favourite silent. That's the one I was going to talk about, because I don't know. Charlie was the most pure Hollywood, I think, and the format of his films is what would set everything up going through the sound era. And for me, City Lights is absolutely perfect. That ending is devastating, and in a good way. And I know what you mean. He could be a little too sentimental, things like The Kid and possibly The Gold Rush, but even those, he's the top one for me.
It's amazing that ending for the City Lights, because because it devastates people in different ways, and no one quite agrees exactly what it means. Some people think he gets the girl, some people think he doesn't get the girl, some people think it doesn't matter, and it's that's why it works and works and works. I think that when he's been, it's when he's overtly just trying to get the audience's pity that the sentimentality grates a little bit, but it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that much. I think people tend to feel that way, but he often there's a key shot, and he did it twice. He did it at the end of the short, The Tramp, and then he does it at the end of The Circus as well, where he loses the girl and he looks forlorn, and then as he walks away from the camera, he kicks up his heels and just brightens up again. And that's Chaplin at his best for me, because he doesn't linger, he doesn't shove that maudlin inside in your face. He goes, okay, that's sad, but on to the next adventure.
I'm glad you mentioned The Circus actually as well, because that's another one that I mean, I think I've watched some of these quite far from each other, so it's hard to compare them too much. But I saw The Circus fairly recently, and I did find it incredibly funny. I kind of feel like that might be the funniest Chaplin film I've seen, but again, it's been a while. I did enjoy that a great deal. I don't know if it had the same impact on me that like Modern Times and City Lights had in terms of filmmaking and just kind of all-round kind of perfection, but I really enjoyed The Circus. I found it very, very funny, and it's got an amazing monkey co-star as well.
Oh yeah, who's the same monkey as the one who's in The Kid Brother.
Yes, yeah.
And also is it the same monkey who's in The Cameraman as well? I think it is.
Yeah, I think so. I can remember writing something about it on my review, I think. But
we used to know this monkey's name, and I've forgotten the monkey's name now.
Oh,
should be down as one of the great silent performers. This
yeah. I enjoyed The Cameraman a lot actually as well. We didn't mention that one earlier.
No, we didn't. No, that is a good one. Yeah.
How about yourselves? What are there any of the Chaplin films that really go for you? I mean, there's a major one that I've left off because I'm not a massive fan of it, but is The Great Dictator. I mean, what are your thoughts on Great Dictator, which is one of his most famous films?
I seem to remember I reviewed that one, and I always liked The Great Dictator, but although it's laboured in places, it works. And there was something about the time it was released and why he did what he did in that film just gives it a weight of importance, which I think is earned. So I think if you watch it just as a film, then parts of it don't work. But if you put it back in the context of when it was released and what he was trying to say, it's magnificent.
Yeah, I love The Great Dictator. I think it's as you're saying, John, it's if you watch it now, that he steps out of character at the end and gives his big speech. And people watching it now often go, "Oh, for God's sake!" But it was what needed to be done at that time in place. So you have to put it into the context, don't you? It's
I compare it as well. There's with a film of Hitchcock's called Foreign Correspondent.
Oh yeah,
which has got an interesting ending because it was filmed just while Hitler was starting his shenanigans, to sum up that period. And Hitchcock ended up entrapped in America because he couldn't go back home. And he does the ending with Joel McCrea, I think, doing a speech on the radio while the studio is literally starting to be bombed. And he's saying into the radio, "Don't turn out the lights. Don't forget Europe." I'm paraphrasing very badly. And again, hugely sentimental, a bit leaden when you watch it now. But when you think about why it was made and why he did that film. He couldn't get back home. He didn't know the fate of some of his family. So to be able to put that into the film, I think was really important. And Chaplin did something very similar, even more pointedly, in The Great Dictator.
Absolutely, yeah. I think The Great Dictator, for me, also, I guess it epitomizes why Chaplin is often held above the others, because he he made the transition to sound, and he managed to incorporate sound but keep the key artistic things that made his silent film so brilliant. So of course The Great Dictator has all those famous moments, like the moment where he dances with the globe, which is so rooted in the silent tradition. But then it also has the first speech he gives as Adonai Tinkle is just a fantastic use of words. It's fantastic, like mess of sounds, and then he does that gag where the microphone sort of leans away from him as he's talking into it. So, and Chaplin's sound films, possibly apart from the last one, I forgot what it's called now. The one that he made in the 60s, that one's not so good. But I like A King in New York, which is not generally given as much. Well, part of the reason a lot of people don't like it is because they accuse it of bitterness, because it's an attack on America and American sort of the shallow values of America at the time, and it was made after he was essentially locked out of America. But I mean, if there is bitterness in there, it's thoroughly deserved, and I think he makes it funny, and he still, in the middle of it all, he can still pull out a great silent routine. So it was all to do with obviously McCarthyism and everything. And there's a scene at the end of A King in New York where his character is hauled up before the House Un-American Activities Committee. And on the way in, he gets his finger wedged in a fire hose, and he can't walk away. So he has to go and unreel the fire hose all the way through. And he steps up in front of HUAC, and that's the point that he gets his finger free. And of course, the hose goes off, and he douses HUAC in water. And it's such a satisfying joke to see.
Yeah, I guess I totally. That's the thing. I keep forgetting that obviously about his sound film. Like I totally forgot. I just we're just going off on one talking about Chaplin, but I forgot. Obviously, we're supposed to talk about silent films, and there's a reason Great Dictator, I guess, wasn't in the list, as it's not silent. But yeah, it's as you say, it still has some of those elements in there. But what's interesting,
Modern Times isn't silent either.
Yeah, I was about to say, technically not. Although, am I right?
Yeah,
Chaplin doesn't really say much, though. I'm making it up. I can't remember.
He does that nonsense song, doesn't he? He performs like a nonsense song.
Yeah.
But most of the sound comes out of radios and screens and things.
Yeah. It's semi-silent. Yeah. And obviously, like City Lights was made in 1931 when sound films were around, but he kind of chose to stick to his guns.
Yeah, it did have a synced up sound. But no
dialogue.
I should say at this point, like I agree. I think City Lights is the masterpiece. It's such a beautiful film. Oh, but there's also, interestingly, there's a couple of sound films we didn't mention because obviously we're supposed to be in silence. But there's has anyone seen Monsieur Verdoux?
No.
Which is the sound film where he plays a serial killer.
Yeah,
and that is a very interesting film.
Yeah,
a very interesting film. But also Limelight. Which was
Limelight, I think, is amazing.
Yeah, and we should mention that because it's the film in which Keaton and Chaplin actually share the screen, isn't it?
Yes,
that final scene where they perform together on stage. Yeah,
that's one I still haven't seen. As I say, I've still got a few gaps with Chaplin because I definitely need to plug.
Yeah, I think
I've got a soft spot for him because he was always such an important man for the film industry overall. You know, he made United Artists, and I think, I mean, I may be misremembering, but I think he's one of the ones who pretty much did a runner from New York to start forming a studio in California.
Yeah, that's right. It was him. Mary Pickford was one of them, wasn't she?
Yes.
Who were the others? There was two others, weren't there?
And then, so for him to be able to do what he did, to give the route for others, then to carry on through the sound era, I think he had every right to be bitter when he was pretty much locked out of America,
Yeah.
as you say, because I don't think Hollywood today, for all its faults, would exist in the same manner if it wasn't for Chaplin.
No,
absolutely. Cool. Well, I guess now what's left to do is kind of chat about silent comedies and filmmakers who've made those that are not from the big three. I guess I had a couple to mention. As I say, I've not really seen many silent comedies that aren't by those three filmmakers, but I did want to mention. It's not an out-and-out comedy, but it still could be classed as a silent comedy, and that is actually Yasujiro Ozu's film "I Was Born," but which is incredibly beautiful little film, and I definitely think that can be classed as a silent comedy. It's funny, but it's also moving. It's sweet. It's. I mean, he's one of my favorite filmmakers. He doesn't ever put a foot wrong in my book. So, well, apart from maybe some of his very earliest stuff. But yeah, that's a wonderful film. Also, he made a few kind of comedies. BFI released a DVD of it ages ago, like his student comedies, and most of those aren't that great. But I did enjoy Where Now Are the Dreams of Youth. I think that's worth mentioning. Again, it mixes kind of melodrama with light comedy. It's not an out and out kind of belly laugh kind of affair, but that's worth watching. And then another one I just want to mention. Actually, no, sorry, two I want to mention is an underrated one. Is one that I watched in one of Eureka's early Universal sets. They did two of them. I wish they'd do some more, but I kind of feel like they didn't sell very well. But from the Volume 2 set, there's a film called What Happened to Jones? And this is a film starring Reginald Denny, who was he was supposedly one of the big kind of silent stars back then. He was very, very popular, but now he's pretty forgotten. But I really enjoyed What Happened to Mr. Jones. I just found it very, very funny. Yeah, all the kind of hijinks they get up to. It's been a while since I've seen it to talk about the specifics, but it kind of tickled my funny bone. And there's another Reginald Denny film in Volume 1 called Skinner's Dress Suit, and I don't know, that didn't really do much for me, that one. It's supposed to be more popular. It's supposed to be his most popular film, but it was okay, but I didn't really enjoy that. But What Happened to Jones, I enjoyed a great deal. And one film I just do want to mention, technically it is pretty much silent, I guess. Again, it's got sync sound, but it doesn't have dialogue, and that's Hundreds of Beavers, which we've talked about already. Obviously not made in the golden proper silent era, but kind of fits, and it's a lot of fun. We talked about that at great length on the review of last year, but I thought I'd mention that. But how about you guys? Have you got anything away from the kind of big three that are favorites?
Well, I had to go looking for it because I'm going to try and talk about a film that I've not even seen properly.
Okay,
I've seen bits of it, and it's, of all people, it's Murnau, who of course is responsible for Nosferatu and Sunrise and a lot of other things. But he did what could be described as a comedy called The Last Laugh.
Oh yeah.
And I've seen parts of it, and I've been meaning to track it down because I love his films, and apparently it's got one of the best physical performances in. And I can't remember. I think I caught the end of it some time ago, and it's like I think it's got a decent release, but yeah, I know I'm reaching, but that's what I want. I've been wanting to look up and find.
It's a brilliant film.
Have you seen it then? Properly?
Yes. A long time ago I saw it. I remember it as being if you took a Chaplin film and you flipped the sentimentality and comedy ratio, because it is quite downbeat. It's funny.
I wasn't expecting to laugh a minute, but
yeah.
Yeah, no, I've seen it. I actually reviewed it. It is available. It's in a set though. I don't know if it's still if the set is still out, but it's in Eureka it's in the early Murnau box set with 5 of his early films. But yeah, I loved it. I thought it's fantastic. It's one of my favorite Murnaus. It's a beautifully made film. It's definitely worth tracking down. But yeah, I can't remember it being particularly funny, but it's been a while since I've seen it. I'm looking at a review now to remind myself of it.
I think maybe he's funny by Murnau standards.
Got laugh in the title.
Exactly. Yes, it's got to be a comedy.
Well, I mean, Nosferatu's got fart in the title if you mix the letters.
That's good reach. Yeah.
The first person I want to mention now, this is someone who's very forgotten, but I think they did release a DVD set at one point, and it kind of brought up some interest in him. Have you heard of Charlie Bowers?
No.
Charlie Bowers. He was an American. He started out as an animator, and then he started making live action slapstick films. But he incorporated his animation into them. So there's lots of like stop motion animation there and cut out animation and stuff. And he only made shorts, and only a handful of live action shorts that survived, but they're absolutely wild. And they a lot of people compare into Monty Python. They say that some of the cut out animation that reminds of Terry Gilliam, and there's some of the jokes are very Python-esque. But really, he's not like anyone I've ever seen before. There's a particular short, and let this be my gift to you. If you go away and find this short, it's readily available because it's public domain. It's called There It Is, and it's about Charlie Bowers plays a Scotland Yard detective. He's called in to investigate the fuzz-faced phantom, who's this strange bald apparition who has appeared in this house, and he's causing chaos in this house. And it's just like Sherlock Jr., it's full of visual tricks all the way through, and it's just completely absurdist. Charlie Bowers' character brings with him his assistant, who is a fly that he carries around in a matchbox, a fly that wears a kilt, and every so often this little fly emerges, stop motion fly, and will help with the investigation. And there's just these crazy scenes. There's one where they go to bed in the night, and then the pictures on the wall start coming to life. There's a sea, image of a ship on a sea, and the water starts falling out of the picture, and he has to put an umbrella up to hide from it. It's just it beggars belief that it's so little known, because it's such an amazing short. He's got some others, and most of them are very good, but that's the one to look for. It's called There It Is by Charlie Bowers.
Oh, we're going to check that out. It sounds amazing.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I did do was just delve into. I've spent this week actually just delving into Harry Langdon's filmography. Now he's a very interesting filmmaker, and I really enjoyed a handful of his films. But I can see why he's not up there with the big three. His approach, his character for starters, is very strange. He's sort of a weird sort of haunted man-child kind of creation, and it's very sort of inconsistent across the films, because they have very different tone. Now these first three films, the Strong Man and Long Pants are probably better known for being the first two films directed by Frank Capra. And Capra also wrote Tramp, 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 which was his first film. And
okay,
those three, there is his best. Well, particularly Tramp, 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 and The Strong Man, I think, is the best of the three. But Long Pants is the weirdest. So in Tramp, Tramp, Tramp and The Strong Man, he plays a sort of shy hero type, and he has lots of adventures, lots of misunderstandings, and things like that. But in Long Pants, so the story of Long Pants is that he is this adult man who's been kept in short pants by his parents, and kept in this sort of state of arrested development, and they decide that they're going to finally give him long pants. And then he goes out in the world finally feeling like a man, and he immediately falls foul of a femme fatale who he falls in love with. he discovers that then she's part of a criminal gang, and she gets arrested, and he reads about it in the newspaper, and he wants to go to her, but he's been betrothed by his parents to this like nice sweet woman who he's not very interested in. So he decides that he's going to murder her.
Okay.
And he takes her out to the forest to shoot her. And there's this long slapstick scene of him. You see, what I thought was going to happen was that he was going to have a change of heart. And it was but no, there's this long scene of him attempting and failing to kill her.
This sounds more like a Coen Brothers.
Yeah, or like the comedy version of Sunrise, maybe. But yeah, then he never really redeems himself. He goes off and he has adventures with the femme fatale, and then in the end, I think I won't spoil it, but it all comes to an end, and then he just sort of goes back, I thought there might be a moment where he realizes the error of his ways, but he just sort of resignedly goes back to the fiancée he tried to kill, and it all just sort of ends. It was very bizarre. But this film, that it caused a sort of a split between Langdon and Capra, and Capra went off and badmouthed Langdon all over the place, and it kind of had a big toll on his career apparently. But also, what had a big toll on his career was he desperately wanted to do more pathos and be sort of like Chaplin. So his next film was this one called Three's a Crowd, and it's an interesting film, and I did enjoy it, but it is so kind of maudlin and downbeat. It's about him taking in this orphan of the storm who's running away from an abusive husband, and he kind of cares for her, and he gets to the point where he's in love with her, and then the husband comes and takes her back, and he's left with nothing, and it just doesn't quite come together. And Langdon style comedy is so sort of slow and deliberate that when you put the weight of this dramatic plot on top of that as well, it just sort of crushes the life out of it a little bit. So I really enjoyed watching them, and I would like to revisit them. If you were going to choose any to watch, I mean, Long Pants is the weirdest, and so that's worth watching. But The Strongman is the standout. The Strongman is a really good film. It has a brilliant sort of ending. It's the one that sort of builds to a crescendo, like the best sort of the big three do. Although Tramp actually ends with a cyclone scene, which does feel like a bit like a precursor to Steamboat Bill Jr.'s ending as well. So yeah, he's definitely worth looking into. I think someone needs to get hold of his films and do a proper do a cleanup job on them, because I watched them all on YouTube because they're public domain, but they're not in the best shape, and I think that can often just kill silent comedy. You need to be able to see it properly, and Langdon has this. I don't know if he's covered in makeup or what, but his face is sort of bright white in a lot of the shots, and there's so much glare, and I feel like I'm missing some of the nuance of the facial expressions and stuff, because sometimes his face does just like a completely white orb. And so someone need to polish them up, and I would definitely purchase a Langdon set if someone could clean those up.
Yeah, I must admit, because before tonight, I was gonna try and watch one of his films, but I just didn't get around to it. But yeah, I did do a hunt around online, see what was there, and yeah, I do struggle when it's. I think especially digitized, kind of stuck on YouTube, old stuff that's not in good shape. It gets even worse through the digitization.
Yes.
And you just get that awful kind of like pixelated, and I find it really hard to watch them. They're so mushy. Yeah. But the one that I almost watched that I found that actually doesn't look too bad is Three's a Crowd. So I might have to try that out at some point. And the print on that looks quite good that I found.
Yeah.
But yeah, I struggle if it just looks like a muddy kind of mess. I don't know. I've been spoilt too much by all these labels, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. Are there any more kind of underrated or non big three kind of you want to talk about, or should we have a little look at
one? But that's my main review. So
yeah. Okay. Well, we can jump into unless John, have you got any other ones, or should we start looking at our reviews?
I was just going to mention, just in relation to silent comedy, what are your guys' thoughts on The Artist from 2011?
It was interesting because I can remember seeing it the first time. Right, everyone had fallen in love with it, and I saw it, and I think it was not long after I'd been watching a lot of silent comedy, and I wasn't blown away by it because it didn't quite mesh with my idea of what silent comedy got. It didn't feel like a perfect sort of reimagining of it to me. I watched it again a few years back, and I enjoyed it more knowing what I was going to get. But I still think people tend to. I think it impresses people who don't know as much about silent films more because they imagine that's what they're like.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think
I'm glad it exists.
Yeah.
But it is flawed,
I mean, I've not seen it since the cinema, but I did enjoy it quite a lot when I saw it at the cinema. I did, but I've not kind of revisited it since. And I think probably when I saw it, I hadn't seen. I had certainly seen a few silent comedies, but I hadn't seen that many. I think I've seen more since. So yeah, it would be interesting to revisit it. But I do remember enjoying it quite.
No, it is it's a good and inventive film. I think it was just. It's one of these cases, I think, where people were so taken by the gimmick that that it immediately got pushed onto that best picture platform.
Yeah.
And I think if it had a bit more, people had a bit more time to digest it, they might have gone. It's maybe not the best picture of the year.
No. The Oscars are rarely spot on anyway, I guess.
Yeah.
Cool, excellent. Well, I'm going to quickly. I mean, we've talked about this filmmaker already, so I won't. And I realise we're kind of running later than I kind of said we would. But the film that I have watched, I mentioned earlier, is The Freshman. So I'm going to quickly run over that. Yeah, I did enjoy this a great deal. I think, as mentioned, I do think Lloyd does a good job of setting up gags in advance and establishing his character, and everything fits the story very nicely. It moves along very nicely. And I did find this genuinely kind of laugh out loud funny. The whole sequence where he's having the big party and he's paid to get a suit tailored, but the tailor hasn't had time to quite finish it, so he has to bring the tailor with him, hiding in the background, fixing it whenever it falls off. And there's a sound gag in a silent film in that where he's asked the tailor to ring a bell when he sees part of his suit fall off. So it actually uses, I mean, obviously on the soundtrack I watched, it actually has a little bell, but it's done visually by you see someone ring the bell. But it's done like a sound gag because I almost called him Keaton then, but because Lloyd keeps hearing this bell, but it's actually coming from someone else. So there's a lot of miscommunication things. But I adored that sequence when his suit was just falling apart. And it all ends in like an underdog sports kind of finale. I'd be intrigued to know how many kind of underdog sports movies existed at that point. I don't know if this was the first, because I don't know. There's a lot of films that might have done that kind of similar sort of thing. Because now it's obviously a staple of having some kind of underdog kind of dweeb kind of winning some kind of big sporting event. And it does it well here. And I also think the romance is very sweet. I think Lloyd's films, I've found that in general, I quite like the again, you could say they're a bit saccharine, like I complained about with Chaplin, but I think he's pulled it off. I love the scene in The Freshman where they first meet, and it's a meet cute, as you'd say these days, when they're on the train. And she's doing the crossword and he's just leaning over and he gets really into the crossword and wants to try and help her with it. And that's the way they kind of get together. I love it. It's a simple concept, but it works really well. So yeah, I loved it. I absolutely fell in love with it. It's as I say, I need to watch more Lloyd. I've watched a couple in the last couple of weeks, and I think I'm probably not going to slow down because, as I say, I've still got Speedy to watch and some others that I should be getting to.
Speed is fantastic.
It is,
definitely.
Yeah, maybe that should be your next port of call.
Yeah, definitely. So yeah, I adored it. The one thing I did find, which we've not talked about that much yet, is the use of captions. There are possibly two more captions than I would like. I prefer silent films that avoid captions. I'm trying to remember. I feel like it's a Murnau film, but I feel like it's Murnau. But there's one filmmaker who tends to avoid captions. Oh, is it Chaplin? It might be both of them or Keaton. I know I can remember seeing one of their films where there's none whatsoever, and I really appreciate that because they were purely using cinema to tell the story. But there are a lot of captions in Freshman. Occasionally, quite often they're probably not necessary. But saying that, there are some very funny captions. There's some quite witty lines in there, so I gave it a pass on that. I did like near the start, for instance. I wrote a note about. I do like how they put they describe the college that he goes to as a large football stadium with a college attached. I thought that was quite a nice little touch. So yeah. That was the only kind of slight niggle, is it was a bit heavy on the old captions for my liking. But yeah.
There's also, like, interestingly, Preston Sturges wrote and directed a sort of sequel to The Freshman called The Sin of Harold Diddlebock, which Harold Lloyd starred in.
I thought I knew Preston Sturges. And where have you pulled that one from?
Well, it's one of his lesser known films. It was towards the tail end of his career, and it's not one of his better films. I saw it and I can remember quite enjoying it. And Harold Lloyd does come and reprise his role, so it's worth it. I'd like to see it again, but I remember it not being especially a standout in the Sturges filmography. Although it does feature that one of my favourite Preston Sturges lines. There's a scene where Harold Lloyd's character goes to a bar and he asks the barman to make him his first drink. And the barman says, "What, your first drink of the day?" And he says, "No, it is my first drink ever." And the barman says, "Sir, you arouse the artist in me."
Excellent. John, what was your recent viewing then for the podcast?
So I actually went back to City Lights.
Oh, okay. Yes.
That's what I mean. When I say I'm vanilla, there we go.
Well, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, when vanilla tastes that good, why not?
Yeah. And the thing that always strikes me about City Lights is it took him 2 years to make it because no one wanted him to make it. It's like the sound era was coming in, and they didn't finish production until something like 1930. So even though it's got that sentimentality that we talked about before, it's also got this air of defiance throughout it, where it's like he is refusing to just give up, and he's going to get this film made. And it does actually feature some sound effects, and it was the first one I think he did a score for himself. So there's some concession there, but it's like he was determined to get it made, and I think it did turn out to be his masterpiece. So we did talk about it a lot earlier, and I've not got a huge amount to add to it, but I think the standout scene for me, apart from the ending, is that boxing match.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I could watch that forever. It's like what's that thing? The ASMR that you could watch and listen to videos that get a certain kind of reaction.
Yeah,
and it's like watching it. It's hypnotic. It's brilliant.
Yeah.
One thing I really love about City Lights as well is the title. It's just got such a cinematic feel to it. City Lights, it immediately it gives you that feel of the backdrop to the whole story. I mean, if it had been called The Tramp and the Blind Girl or something like that, it would have lost points. But it's the perfect title to set it up. I think it's one of my favorite film titles. It immediately gets my juices flowing when I hear that title.
Yes, yeah, I know what you mean. It's definitely, again, it's that defiance that he's gone for something even in the title,
Interestingly, like you're talking about him in composing his own scores and things. Has anyone ever seen? I think it was in the 60s. He went back. Charlie Chaplin went back and he made a version of the Gold Rush where he put a voiceover narration on it, and it's dreadful. I don't know what he thought he was doing, but it's the version I got a Charlie Chaplin set, and it's the Gold Rush is 2 discs, and for some reason the sound version that he made is the main. It's on the main disc. The actual film is on the second disc, and so I can remember the first time I did it and put it on, and it comes on, and all it is Charlie Chaplin, and he's in his normal voice describing everything that's happening on the screen. So he says, "The little tramp walked into the cabin and looked surprised as he," and he thinks, what on earth did he think he was doing?
No, I don't think I've actually seen that version.
I do have that. I've got the same set as you, I think, by the sounds of things.
Yeah.
But I don't think I've actually sat and watched that whole one. But yeah, I remember being puzzled by the different version though.
That as soon as I heard it start up, I went, "This isn't happening," and I took it out and put the other disc in.
A bit like when you watch a colorized version of something.
Oh yeah, yeah. Every year at Christmas they push a colorized version of "It's a Wonderful Life."
No,
no, I know, and I remember seeing that because it was on the Blu-ray, and it was so frustrating because they've done it so well, and it's still bloody awful.
Yeah,
yeah.
Yeah, I think if I sat through all of that, I think Clarence would have to come down and put me off the bridge.
Yeah, definitely. The only other thing I was going to mention in relation to silent films is, have you guys read the book of Hugo?
No.
The Invention of Hugo Cabret, I think it's called. Now, I do like a Scorsese film, but it departs from a few things that are in the book, which make it really, really annoying. The book itself is wonderful. It's a real doorstep. It's so thick, but it takes you about 45 minutes to read. Because what Brian Selznick has done is he uses cinema as an approach for black and white sketches. So it's almost like a flick book. So it's basically a silent movie in a book form.
Wow.
With just occasional little pieces of almost like title cards. And the story features, if you've not read it or if you've not seen the film, I won't spoil it, but it features a very famous filmmaker from the era, who turns out to be almost in hiding. And it's a beautiful story. And like I say, it takes you less than an hour to read. So it's really worth looking up if you love silent movies in general.
Oh, wow, yeah, I'll have to check that out. I'm on Amazon already. Not buying it, adding it to the shopping list.
Okay, so for my film, I've gone to Roscoe Arbuckle. As we said earlier, he's professionally known as Fatty Arbuckle, but I'm going to refer to him as Roscoe because he absolutely hated that name. And it was apparently it was his childhood nickname, and he said it felt like an inevitable nickname to get lumbered with, but to get lumbered with it professionally as well was very bad luck. Could have been worse. According to Wikipedia, his fans also called him the Balloonatic and the Prince of Wales.
Oh,
Wales spelled like it's terrible, isn't it? But yeah, we'll call him Roscoe, I think. So obviously one thing to get out of the way first, because this tends to be the only context he gets talked about in these days, is he was involved in one of the most famous Hollywood scandals where he was tried for the rape and murder of a young actress who died at a party in a hotel that he was there at. Now, I don't want to get into the dodgy area of examining the veracity of rape accusations and things, but it is generally agreed now that he was innocent, and I think a lot of people don't realize that. But I've read a lot about the trial, so we won't go into all of it, obviously. But among the questionable details of it, the accuser was a friend of the woman who died, And she later just admitted outright that she was trying to extort money out of him. He was tried 3 different times because the trial kept falling apart. They couldn't get a consensus from the jury. But the 3rd and final trial, the jury deliberated for 6 minutes before they found him innocent. And apparently 5 of those minutes was spent preparing a handwritten apology to him for his shabby treatment by the justice system. But
really fair, I didn't know that bit.
Yeah, I mean, well, I think most people they know that he was tried for rape and murder, and I think it's become sort of people just assume that he was guilty from that. He was banned by Hollywood because unfortunately this was the era where pressure groups were starting to get involved about Hollywood morals. And so he became this emblem, and they didn't care that he'd been found innocent. The fact that he was at this party where these things went on, he became this emblem of like Hollywood sleaze, and so he was banned, and it pretty much destroyed his career. But yeah, it's I was looking at some reviews on Letterboxd, and there's still a lot of people saying, "Oh, obviously I shouldn't be watching this because of what he did," and I think it's generally considered that he was innocent, but obviously we'll never know for sure. But the facts of the case, including the accuser admitting wrongdoing, seem to point the other way.
Wow.
So I've not seen a lot of his work, to be honest. He mainly worked in shorts. I've seen one short called The Cook, which is I think I watched that when I was really getting to Buster Keaton, and Keaton appears. He first appeared in a lot of films with Roscoe Arbuckle. As David was saying earlier, he mentored both Chaplin and Keaton, so he's obviously a important figure in the history of silent comedy. But he did also make 9 feature films. And most of them are lost or only available in like obscure archives somewhere. But I managed to watch 2 in preparation for this. There's one called The Roundup, and there's one which very unfortunately is titled Life of the Party. But he, interestingly, seems to largely have moved away from the slapstick of the shorts in his features. They're more character and plot driven. They do occasionally, because it was expected of him, there's occasional little concessions to slapstick. Like in Life of the Party, there's this scene where he's just in an office, and I think he's just been on a phone call or something, and he just puts the phone down, and then he just suddenly falls out of the window. It's just an obvious sort of concession to slapstick stuck in there. So Life of the Party, it's all right, but it's a bit of a failed experiment. But The Roundup I thought was excellent. So that's the film that I'm going to be looking at. Now it's not a pure comedy. It's part comedy, part Western, part melodrama. But they managed to get those elements to mesh really convincingly. And Arbuckle is the glue that really holds it together. He gives a really, really good performance. It's a genuinely like strong acting job, I thought. He does get top billing because he was that famous, but he's kind of a supporting player in it. But the film undoubtedly favors him. All the best material goes to him. Whenever he appears on screen, that's when the film comes alive. He basically plays a lonely sheriff, sort of a lovelorn character, longing to find love. But he's not kind of a schlubby character. He's portrayed as being really good at his job, and he gets to do like some heroics and things. It's this signature move that they give him whenever he's held at gunpoint by a bandit. There's the baddie is played by Wallace Beery in this, and whenever he gets him at gunpoint, he sort of sighs and resignedly like takes out this cigarette paper. Looks like he's going to roll himself a cigarette, and he reaches into his coat, presumably for the tobacco, but he actually pulls out a gun, and he gets to do this little routine a couple of times. It's very cool. He does do some slapstick bits here and there again, but they're a bit more convincingly incorporated. But it's the film's characterized more by moments like the gun trick, where he brings that control over his body that he's got into the narrative. and he's also he's pivotal to the drama. He gets some dramatic scenes. He gets to take place in the big action shootout climax and everything. One thing that sticks out about it, and I suppose it's a bit of a spoiler, but I can tell you about it without actually spoiling the plot. It has one of the most downbeat endings I've ever seen in a silent comedy. Arbuckle's character, he's talking to a group of people about the adventure that he's just had, and he slowly realizes they're all ignoring him because they've all coupled up and they're all off sort of billing and cooing. And he turns around and he looks from couple to couple to couple. There's one of the women that sort of teased a possible romance for him in the film, but he loses the girl in the end to another person. So he's looking from couple to couple, all kissing, and he just sighs and he says, "Oh, who am I kidding? Nobody loves a fat man." And then it just ends. That's the end of the film. And then to add insult to injury, the line "nobody loves a fat man" became the tagline of the film. Like there's all these posters of Roscoe Arbuckle in all these like cowboy outfit with "nobody loves a fat man" plastered all over them. Of course, it's not true because audiences did love him, and the Roundup was a huge hit. And on this evidence, I think we should maybe reignite that love. And I think the scandal that he was involved in is probably what still is standing in the way of people rediscovering him.
Yeah.
Good example of cancel culture, isn't it?
Yeah, a very old example. Yeah.
And I've not seen the film, so I was just quickly looking up some details. And Buster Keaton's listed an uncredited role. Yeah.
Oh, really?
And it's just typical of the era. His character name is something like Un-Indian. So,
Indian,
you know, it's like, yeah, all right. But, you know, apparently he's uncredited. So he's in there somewhere.
Yeah, there's a couple of funny little comedy cameos. So I don't know who played him, but there's a character who's extremely bow-legged, and his character name is Parenthesis.
Oh, dear.
No, that's brilliant.
So I have seen because as I say, you did do a few shots with Buster Keaton. I have seen a few of those in well, I've got an old DVD set of his shorts and also the Eureka Blu-ray set. So I have seen some of the shorts together, and yeah, good fun. But I do tend to prefer Keaton's later, longer stuff, obviously. But yeah, no, I'll have to check that out. Sounds like my kind of thing. Well, are we done, guys? Are we?
I think so. Yeah.
Covered it well. Yeah, it's we've gone past the hour I was looking at originally, but we always do.
Yeah. It's just good to have people to talk to about fine comedy. I've tried in the past, and it takes seconds. You see people just glaze over the minute you start to talk about it.
It's so frustrating. With silent film in general, it's like there's some really good stuff in there.
I know.
And it's back in an era where they couldn't really shortcut anything. And they always say about Kurosawa, one of his points was that there was always movement in the scene, even if there was nothing going on. He'll have weather, he'll have something going on in the background. And you look at modern filmmaking now, and even the good stuff, it's like there's so many scenes where it's like it's just a couple of people talking, and it's like take away the ability to do half the stuff, and you have to work a lot harder. You have to make something properly visual. So the silent era, of course, has to be that. And it needs more. It needs people to take more of a chance on it. I think. Yeah, I think it's a similar effect to animation, where people think, "Oh, it's a cartoon."
Yeah,
and actually, animation is probably the most cinematic medium because they can do anything.
Yeah,
but no, it doesn't get counted.
Yeah,
it's so frustrating, isn't it? There, in all those years, that there should have been an animated Best Picture Oscar by now. And
yes,
absolutely.
That was what happened with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs. Everyone thought, oh, that would be the one, but they fobbed Disney off with a special
one, yeah.
Oscar with like the little Oscars to go with it. And interesting, that happened to Chaplin. They gave him a special Oscar for The Circus. It just went straight to him, and it was saying for writing, directing, and performing in The Circus, and that was because they thought otherwise he was just going to clean up with that film that year, and so they essentially took that away from him by just giving him a special Oscar rather than letting him compete in the categories.
Yeah.
Oh, wow, no, I didn't know that. Yeah.
I think just briefly going back as well to what you were saying, John, about comparing it to modern films. I think as well, in the modern era of cinema, because cinema's been around so long, it's become so slick filmmaking that, and it's become so advanced that it's overloaded with stuff. We've got amazing sound design, we've got loads of music, we've got loads of special effects, we've got everything. But the thing is, I think sometimes that there's too much. It's too much to take in, and you don't appreciate the finer details. I think when you strip it back to silent cinema, it is, without wanting to sound a bit wanky, kind of pure cinema. You are just watching. I mean, that's not to detract from sound, because I'm a firm believer that done right, sound can be incredibly powerful, and music as well. But you're really stripping it back, so you're just focusing purely on the filmmaking, on the this camera work, the editing, the actors on screen, the way they move. You've got less distractions. Films these days, there's too much going on, and it's overwhelming. And I do love getting back to that simplicity. That's not to say that sounds almost like damning praise. I'm not saying all silent films are very simple, but I think more in terms of in construction, there's less mud, there's less noise. It's you can kind of appreciate the story, maybe even possibly more because you're so focused. I do appreciate that kind of that style of filmmaking a great deal.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, yeah, I guess we should tie things up anyway. But has anyone got, before we kind of say goodbye, has anyone got anything particular to plug on Blueprint, or if they've done anything else online that they want to talk about? Any guests on any podcasts, Andy, for instance? I know you're doing a lot of guest work these days.
Well, I'm going to be appearing on Howard Kasner's Pop Art podcast. I'm going to be recording that later this week. Talking about Ron Howard's Parenthood and Wes Anderson's The Royal Tenenbaums.
Oh, nice, a good pair there.
Okay, yeah.
I'm also I'm planning to do another of my ranking features on Blueprint Review. I'm planning to watch, review, and rank all of the Ealing comedies soon. So,
oh wow, nice!
I'm really looking forward to diving into that.
Nice. I was on a podcast.
I assumed that Lady Killers is at the top.
Well, we'll have to see. I go into these things with a certain idea of what's going to come, and often it doesn't work out like that. But I think it's going to be a struggle, because I have a trouble separating the Lady Killers, Kind Hearts and Coronets, and the Laventille Mob. I love all three of those so much.
The separation for me with, I know we'll go way off topic now, but with the Lady Killers, I did a film studies course years ago, and when they used the Lady Killers for narrative, and I still maintain since then, the Lady Killers is the only demonstrably perfect narrative film. So that can be a subject for another time if you want. But if you want some waffle about the Lady Killers, I'm available.
Maybe take out Frankie Howard's scene, and I might agree with you.
Well, yeah, okay, yeah.
I can say I was, well, this is maybe 6 months ago now, but last year I was on the Lambcast talking about Kind Hearts and Coronets, and we talk about Ealing comedy too. So yeah, I have to give that a listen. But yeah, in terms of me, I'm doing a bit of guesting as well, although I don't think it's going to be online for a while. But so it's probably pointless mentioning it now. But Movie Rob he keeps doing his Movie Rob minutes, where he goes watches films minute by minute, and he's been jumping between Die Hard films and other films, and he's now up to what he's going to do. He's going to do Die Hard 4 and Die Hard 5, but not a minute at a time because he doesn't want to keep watching them for that long.
Why would you?
They're doing them in 5-minute chunks. So I'm going to join him to talk about Die Hard 4 soon, but I don't think it's going to be online for a couple of months. So don't hold your breath for that one. But I imagine some of the earlier episodes with other guests will be starting soon. So check that out. I'm also due to be on the Lambcast at the end of the month, so keeping an ear out for that. And in terms of Blueprint, it's business as usual. I've been churning out quite a few reviews as usual. After Christmas, I didn't have a huge amount of work on, so I've been kind of putting more energy into writing. And but things are picking up again now, so I'm going to struggle to keep going. But yeah, I'm hoping to dust off a review of Prince of Broadway shortly. It might be up before this podcast is, to be honest. And what else have I got? I've watched a few that I've watched but not reviewed. Yeah, there should be a review of The Railroad Man up soon, and also Shoot First, Die Later, which a fantastic title there. Yeah, an Italian kind of Poliziotteschi Euro crime movie, which was fun. So yeah, I look forward to those reviews in the next week or so when I get a chance. John, have you got any reviews coming up soon? Or?
So the reviews coming up are the spaghetti westerns.
Yeah.
Fistful got delayed, I think. That one was ready to go last week, but isn't out there for a couple of weeks. So a few dollars more has arrived, so that one will be coming up. I've also got Behold, a Pale Horse, but that only landed the other day, as I told you, which is very odd. Because I think it got lost somewhere in customs. I found the label on the packet. It was sent on April the 4th, so goodness knows where it's been.
I'm not sure why it went through customs. I was going to say usually it's to the UK. That's really unusual.
Yeah, I think it's something to do with Guernsey. I don't know, looking at the postmarks, but that will be up at some point. But yeah, I think that's about where I'm at the moment.
Cool. Well, excellent. I guess that leaves me to thank you both for being on the episode. I had a lot of fun, and hopefully we'll be back again to talk about some other random topic that I come up with. And and thanks for anyone who's still listening almost 2 hours in. It's but it's been a pleasure, guys, and I shall speak to you later, I'm sure. Good night.
See you soon. Cheers, guys.
Bye.